The room was not meant for anything special that day. It was a wide public hall where people passed through without thinking much about it. Some came to rest their feet, some waited for someone, and others simply used the space to escape the noise outside. In one corner stood an old piano. Its surface showed signs of time, with small scratches and faded shine. Most people walked past it without a second look. The piano had been there for years, and few remembered the last time someone played it with real care. She entered the room quietly. There was nothing about her that demanded attention. Her clothes were simple, her posture relaxed, and her face carried the calm look of someone used to staying unnoticed. She did not rush. She moved at an easy pace, as if she had nowhere urgent to be. People around her did not turn their heads. To them, she was just another stranger passing through a shared space. She stopped near the piano, not because she planned to play it, but because she needed a place to sit. The bench was empty, and the piano offered a quiet corner. She placed her bag down gently and sat. For a moment, she simply rested there, listening to the sounds around her. Shoes tapping on the floor, distant voices, a phone ringing somewhere. Life moved on without caring who she was. A small group stood a few steps away. They were talking about nothing important. One of them glanced toward the piano and then at her. With a half smile and a casual tone, someone spoke up. It was not a serious request. It sounded more like a joke. "Can you play something?" The words were light, almost careless. Another person added quickly, "Just something simple. A basic tune." There was no challenge in their voices. No expectation. It was the kind of request made when people are bored and looking for a short distraction. If she said no, no one would mind. If she played, they expected a few soft notes, nothing more. She looked up slowly. Her expression did not change much. She did not smile or frown. She simply nodded once, as if agreeing to something small and ordinary. There was no sign that this moment meant anything to her. She turned toward the piano and lifted the cover with care. The keys were worn, some slightly yellowed. She placed her fingers above them but did not play right away. She took a quiet breath, not deep enough to draw attention. It was the kind of breath people take before doing something familiar, not exciting. A few nearby people paused what they were doing. Not because they expected something special, but because any sound from the piano was rare. Someone leaned against a wall. Another person checked their phone while half watching. Her fingers touched the keys, and the first notes filled the room. The tune was simple. Everyone recognized it in some way even if they could not name it. It moved slowly, gently, without surprise. The sound was clean but plain. Exactly what had been asked for. A basic tune. People listened politely. No one leaned forward. No one whispered. It was background music, the kind that fits into the space without changing it. A few seconds passed. Someone went back to their phone. Another turned to speak again. She continued playing at the same calm pace. Her shoulders stayed relaxed. Her face showed no strong emotion. It looked like she was only passing time, just like everyone else in the room. But something subtle began to shift. The tune stayed the same, yet the way she played it started to feel different. The notes became clearer, more confident. Her fingers no longer hesitated. They moved as if they knew exactly where to go, without thinking. The rhythm became steadier, fuller, though still quiet. One person noticed and stopped talking. Another looked up from their phone without realizing why. The sound was still simple, but it carried a kind of control that was hard to ignore. She did not look around to see who was watching. Her eyes stayed on the keys. Her focus seemed to turn inward, as if the room around her was slowly fading. The outside noise began to feel distant, almost unimportant. The piano, once ignored, now felt awake. A few more people drifted closer, not standing too near, just enough to hear better. No one spoke. No one clapped. It was still too early for that. But curiosity had replaced boredom. The tune repeated, yet each time it returned, it carried a slightly stronger presence. The sound filled more space. It reached farther into the room. It was still gentle, still simple, but it no longer felt small. Her hands moved with ease, wrists loose, fingers pressing down with purpose. There was no struggle in her movement. It looked natural, like walking on a path she had traveled many times before. A person standing nearby felt a strange pull, as if the music was asking them to stay a little longer. Another felt their chest tighten slightly, though they could not explain why. The tune was not sad or dramatic, yet it carried something real. She had not been given a stage. There were no lights or announcements. No one had introduced her, and still the space around her was changing. Someone whispered softly, "She's good." The words were not loud, but they were honest. She continued playing, still holding back, still respecting the simplicity of the tune she had been given. It felt like she was testing the room, feeling its mood, understanding how far she could go. The room waited without knowing it was waiting. When the final note of that simple section faded, she did not stop. She did not lift her hands right away. She let the sound disappear naturally, allowing the silence to settle. For a brief moment, no one moved. That was when it became clear this was not going to be just another forgotten tune. Something was building quietly and patiently beneath the surface, and the room, without realizing it, was about to witness more than it ever expected from a simple request. The silence after the last note did not feel empty. It felt full, like the room was holding its breath. People did not clap or speak. They simply waited, unsure of what they were waiting for. She remained seated, her hands still resting near the keys, her head slightly lowered. Then she played again. The tune returned, familiar and gentle, but it did not sound the same as before. It moved with more flow now, as if it had found its own direction. The notes connected smoothly, one leading into the next without effort. The sound felt warmer, closer, like it was meant for the people standing there. Someone near the entrance slowed their steps. Another person who was about to leave decided to stay. No one said anything out loud, but the shift was clear. The music was no longer background sound. It had become the center of the space. Her fingers moved with quiet confidence. They traveled across the keys with ease, never rushing, never dragging. It looked natural, like she was speaking a language she had known since childhood. Her shoulders remained relaxed, but there was strength in her posture now. A few people exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand that this was not luck or a casual hobby. There was something practiced in the way she played, something earned over time. The tune began to grow. It was still simple at its core, but small changes appeared. A note lingered a bit longer. A pause created tension. A soft rise in volume made the sound reach deeper into the room. These changes were gentle, but they carried emotion. One listener felt a memory surface without warning. Another felt their chest tighten slightly, not from sadness, but from recognition. The music did not tell a clear story, yet it felt personal to each person in the room. She did not look up. She did not seek approval or attention. Her focus stayed on the piano, as if the rest of the world no longer existed. The noise from outside faded further. Even the quiet movements inside the room slowed. Someone who had been leaning against the wall straightened their back. Another stepped closer without realizing they had moved. Phones were lowered. Conversations stopped completely. The piano sounded stronger now, more alive. Each key responded clearly to her touch. The instrument that had been ignored for years suddenly felt important, almost proud to be played this way. Her hands began to move faster, though still controlled. The rhythm gained energy. It was not loud or wild yet, but it carried purpose. The basic tune was slowly opening up, revealing layers beneath it. A person near the piano whispered softly, "She's not even trying yet." The words carried truth. She introduced a new pattern into the tune, something unexpected but fitting. It made a few people lift their eyebrows in surprise. The sound rolled through the room like a wave, steady and sure. No one knew where this was going, but everyone wanted to find out. The music began to pull the room together. Strangers stood side by side, sharing the same moment without speaking. The space felt smaller, more connected. The piano was no longer just an object in the corner. It was a voice. Her breathing stayed calm. Her movements remained smooth. There was no sign of stress or effort, even as the music grew more complex. It felt like she was guiding the tune rather than forcing it. A listener near the back closed their eyes for a second, letting the sound wash over them. Another nodded slowly in time with the rhythm. These reactions were quiet, personal, and real. The tune shifted again. This time, the change was clearer. The melody lifted, brighter and bolder. The sound filled the room fully now, reaching every corner. It was no longer possible to ignore. People who had arrived late stopped in their tracks. They could sense something was happening even before they saw her. The piano carried a kind of energy that drew them in. She leaned slightly forward, her fingers pressing the keys with more strength. The sound deepened. The piano responded with a richness that surprised even those familiar with it. A few listeners felt a quiet rush of excitement. Not the loud kind, but the steady feeling that something meaningful was unfolding right in front of them. She still did not rush. Instead, she allowed the music to breathe. She gave space between phrases, letting the sound echo and fade before continuing. Each pause felt intentional, like part of the story she was telling through sound. The room remained silent except for the piano. Even small movements seemed too loud now. People were careful not to break the moment. Her hands moved confidently across the keys, creating a balance between softness and strength. The tune had grown far beyond what anyone expected when they first made the casual request. Someone near the front felt a smile spread across their face without realizing it. Another felt a sudden urge to clap but held back, sensing it was not time yet. The music carried a quiet fire now. It did not shout, but it burned steadily, warming the room from the inside out. She lifted her hands briefly, then brought them back down with renewed focus. The tune shifted once more, preparing for something bigger. The energy in the room tightened, like a string pulled just enough to create tension. People leaned in slightly. Hearts beat a little faster. Everyone could feel it. This was no longer a simple performance. It was a moment building toward something powerful. And as her fingers pressed the keys again, stronger than before, it became clear that the basic tune had only been the beginning. The moment stretched just before the change. It was the kind of pause that feels heavy, like the air itself has weight. People did not shift their feet or clear their throats. They stood still, eyes fixed on her hands. Even those who had just arrived sensed that something important was about to happen. She pressed the keys again, and this time the sound came out stronger. The tune broke free from its simple shape. The melody rose and fell with confidence, no longer careful or polite. Her fingers moved faster now, not rushed, but certain. The piano responded with a deeper voice, filling the room in a way it never had before. A quiet gasp escaped from someone near the front. Another person's eyes widened. This was the moment when understanding finally landed. This was not someone casually playing to pass time. This was skill shaped by years, controlled and released at the right moment. Her body leaned into the music. Her shoulders lifted slightly, then settled. Her head moved with the rhythm, not for show, but because the sound demanded it. The piano was no longer something she was touching. It felt like something she was speaking through. The music grew bold. Strong chords echoed across the space, followed by quick runs that flowed like water. Each note landed clean and clear. There were no mistakes, no hesitation. Felt fearless, like she trusted herself completely. People stepped closer without thinking. The circle around the piano tightened. Those in the back stood on their toes. No one wanted to miss a second. Someone whispered, "This is unreal." But the words were barely heard over the sound. Her hands moved with blazing energy now. The simple tune had transformed into something powerful and alive. Carried joy, tension, and release all at once. The piano seemed to glow under her touch, every key responding as if it had been waiting for this moment. The room felt smaller, not because of the crowd, but because the music pulled everyone into the same space emotionally. Strangers shared looks of disbelief and wonder. No one checked their phone anymore. Nothing else mattered. The rhythm picked up. Her left hand drove the beat with strength while her right hand danced freely across the keys. The sound rolled forward, pushing the energy higher and higher. It was exciting but never messy. Every movement had purpose. A listener near the wall felt their heart racing. Another felt their eyes sting, surprised by sudden emotion. The music was not telling a clear story, yet it felt deeply personal, as if it reached inside each person in a different way. She did not smile. She did not look up. Her focus was complete. Sweat formed lightly on her forehead, but she did not wipe it away. She stayed with the piano, fully present. The sound grew louder, richer, more intense. The piano filled every corner of the room. Even the high ceiling seemed to vibrate. People held their breath. Then she pulled back, just slightly. The volume dropped for a moment, creating space. The sudden softness felt almost shocking after the power. It made the listeners lean in, unsure of what would come next. She played a quieter phrase, gentle but confident, like a reminder of where it all began. The original tune could still be felt beneath the layers, steady and familiar. That balance between control and freedom made the moment even stronger. Then she struck the keys again with force. The blazing part arrived fully now. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, fast and precise. The sound burst forward, bold and fearless. It was no longer just music filling a room. It felt like an experience washing over everyone at once. Someone in the crowd covered their mouth in shock. Another laughed softly, not from humor, but from pure amazement. A few people swayed gently, unable to stay still. The piano sang, cried, and soared under her hands. Every note felt alive. The simple tune from the beginning was now almost unrecognizable. Yet it still lived inside the performance, holding it together. The energy reached its peak. Her arms moved with strength, wrists loose, fingers sharp. She gave everything to the moment, not holding back anymore. The room pulsed with sound. People felt it in their chests, in their hands, in their breath. It was impossible to stay untouched. Then, just when it felt like it could go no further, she slowed. The music softened again, like a fire settling into glowing embers. The fast notes faded into longer, deeper sounds. The room followed her lead, relaxing but staying fully focused. She let the final phrase stretch out, allowing each note to ring and disappear naturally. The sound faded slowly, leaving behind a thick silence. Her hands hovered above the keys, then finally rested. No one moved. For a few seconds, the room stayed frozen, caught between what had just happened and what came next. The silence was powerful, heavy with feeling. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something rare. And though the music had stopped, its impact lingered, hanging in the air, waiting for the room to finally react. The silence finally broke, but not with noise. It broke with movement. Someone shifted their weight. Another took a slow breath. The room seemed to wake up all at once, as if everyone realized together that they were still standing there. Then the first clap sounded. It was not loud at first. Came from somewhere near the back, unsure but honest. A second clap followed, then another. Within seconds, the room filled with applause. It was not polite or controlled. It was real, full, and rising. She stayed seated. Her hands rested on her lap. Her shoulders rose and fell with steady breaths. She did not look surprised by the reaction, but she did not expect it either. It was simply happening around her. People stepped closer now without hesitation. Some smiled openly. Others shook their heads in disbelief. A few laughed softly, not knowing how else to release what they were feeling. The applause grew stronger. Someone whistled. Another person clapped above their head. The sound echoed off the walls, filling the space that moments earlier had been owned by the piano. She finally looked up. Her eyes met the crowd for the first time. There was no pride in her expression, no sense of showing off. Instead, there was something softer. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. She gave a small nod, more like a thank you than a bow. The clapping slowly settled, but the energy remained. A few people spoke at once. That was incredible. I've never heard anything like that here. Where did you learn to play like that? The questions overlapped, gentle and curious. No one pushed too close. There was respect in the way they approached her. She stood up slowly, adjusting the bench back into place as if returning the piano to its usual state. Her movements were calm again, grounded. The blazing energy from moments ago had quieted, but it had not disappeared. She answered simply when someone spoke directly to her. Short replies, a small smile, nothing dramatic. More people had gathered now, drawn by the sound and the reaction. Those who had missed the performance listened closely as others tried to explain what had happened, though words failed them. You had to be here, someone said. It felt different. The piano sat silently again, but it no longer felt forgotten. People glanced at it with new respect, as if it had revealed a hidden side of itself. A person near the front held up a phone, hesitating. Do you mind if I record something? She thought for a moment, then nodded. Just something small, she said quietly. The room hushed again, not fully silent this time, but attentive. She returned to the bench and sat down once more. This time the feeling was different. There was no surprise now, no low expectation. Everyone knew what she was capable of. The air carried anticipation. She placed her hands on the keys and played softly. Not fast, not loud, just enough to let the sound breathe. The tune was gentle, almost comforting, like a calm after a storm. People listened closely, absorbing every note. Some closed their eyes. Others watched her hands with quiet admiration. The music flowed without force. It did not try to impress. Simply existed, honest and warm. After a short while, she let the sound fade and lifted her hands. This time, the applause was calmer but deeper. Felt settled, full of respect rather than shock. She stood again and stepped away from the piano. Conversations began softly. People spoke in lower voices, as if the room itself asked for gentleness now. Strangers shared thoughts, smiling at one another. That changed my whole day, someone said. I didn't expect to feel that, said another. A few people lingered near her, asking about music, about practice, about life. She answered what she could, never going into long explanations. She listened more than she spoke. Outside, the world continued as usual. Traffic passed. Voices echoed from distant streets. But inside the room, something had shifted. The moment had carved itself into memory. One by one, people began to leave. Some glanced back at the piano before going, as if saying goodbye to something meaningful. Others left with lighter steps, carrying the sound with them. She picked up her bag and slung it over her shoulder. She paused for a second, looking at the piano one last time. Her fingers brushed lightly against the edge, a quiet gesture of thanks. No announcement followed. No spotlight appeared. There was no ending speech. She walked toward the exit and blended back into the flow of people. Yet the room did not return to how it was before. Those who remained felt it. The air still carried traces of the music. The piano no longer felt like furniture. It felt like a place where something important had happened. People spoke about the moment long after she left. Some shared it with friends later that day. Others replayed it in their minds while lying awake at night. It was not just about skill. It was about being reminded that unexpected beauty can appear anywhere, without warning, through someone who never asked to be noticed. And for everyone who stood in that room, the memory stayed clear. A basic tune had filled the space. Then something deeper had taken over the room completely. And even after the sound was gone, its echo remained. The days that followed moved on like any other days, but for many people who had been in that room, something felt different. They carried the memory quietly, without telling many others. It was not the kind of moment that needed explanation. It was the kind that stayed with you when you were alone. Some replayed the sound in their minds while riding a bus or waiting in line. Others caught themselves smiling for no clear reason. The music had slipped into their routines, soft but steady, like a reminder that something real had touched them. She returned to her normal life. There were no crowds waiting for her the next morning. No messages asking for interviews. No sudden change in her daily routine. She woke up, prepared her day, and stepped back into the flow of ordinary life. That was how she had always lived. Yet something inside her felt lighter. She did not talk much about what had happened. When someone asked how her day had been, she answered simply, "It was fine." That was true. It had been more than fine, but she did not need to say that out loud. She still practiced when she could. Sometimes late at night. Sometimes early in the morning. She played not for an audience, but because the piano had always been her place to think, to breathe, to understand herself. The room from that day came back to her now and then, but she did not chase the memory. She knew moments like that could not be forced. Across the city, the story traveled quietly. Someone shared it with a friend over coffee. Another mentioned it at dinner, saying, "You won't believe what I saw the other day." A short video appeared online, shaky and imperfect, but real. People watched it again and again, not because it was polished, but because it felt honest. Comments appeared beneath it. "Look at the way she plays. That moment gave me chills. I wish I had been there." The video spread slowly, never exploding, never becoming a trend. It moved at its own pace, finding people who needed it. She saw it one evening while scrolling without much thought. She recognized the sound immediately, her hands on the keys, the room, the silence before the applause. She watched once, then she put the phone down. She did not feel the need to watch again. The moment already lived inside her. A few weeks later, she passed the same room again. The piano was still there, sitting quietly in its corner. People walked past it just like before. Some glanced at it. A few slowed down as if remembering something, though they could not quite place why. She stopped for a moment. She did not sit. She did not play. She simply stood there, listening to the sounds of the room. Footsteps, voices, life moving forward. She smiled softly and walked on. For those who had been there that day, the memory stayed strong. Not because of how loud the music was, or how fast her hands moved, but because of how unexpected it had been. It reminded them that beauty does not always arrive announced. Sometimes it appears quietly, through someone who never asked for attention. One listener later found the courage to return to an old passion they had given up on. Another decided to slow down, to listen more, to notice the small moments. Someone else bought a used instrument and began learning, not to be perfect, but to feel something real again. None of them connected these changes directly to the music, but the connection was there. As for her, she continued to walk her own path. She played when she felt the need. She stayed silent when she did not. She understood now, more than ever, that her gift was not about being seen. It was about being ready. Ready for the moment when a simple request turns into something meaningful. Ready for the room that needs to be reminded. Ready to let the music speak when words cannot. The piano in that public space would be played again by many hands. Some careful, some unsure, some playful. Most would be forgotten, but that one moment would remain. A basic tune, a quiet beginning, then a fire that filled the room without warning. And even though the sound faded, what it stirred inside people did not. That was the power of it. Not fame, not applause, just a shared human moment, honest and unplanned, leaving behind a gentle truth, that sometimes, all it takes is one simple tune for something extraordinary to take over the room.